We're going to dive right into the message today, and we are in the middle of a series on fasting, not on fasting, on self-control. Today we're going to tackle fasting. We've been talking about this idea of self-control for a couple of weeks, and what we discovered is that self-control is hard. It's difficult. There are probably things in this past week that you look back saying, oh man, I wish I didn't eat that much. I wish I didn't talk that much. I wish I didn't buy that much. Whatever it is, there are probably things from this past week that you're just saying, why did I do that? Why didn't I restrain that? Why couldn't I restrain that? And we talked before about how this is a tension between the flesh and the spirit. And when I mean the flesh, I mean the physical part of us that was corrupted when Adam and Eve sinned and we took on a sin nature. And that includes our body, but also the part of our body it's the brain. Our brain actually has sinful patterns of neural networks and pathways where we just sin reflexively. We don't even have to think about it. It's just a natural reaction. Something happens and I give a reflexive response, but the reflexive response is a sinful response. And so we've been finding it hard to conquer that because the flesh says this: I must feel good. I must have more. I must consume this. I need this. And the flesh, it's pretty strong. When it says, I must have this, we go, okay, you're the boss. Whatever you tell us, we'll go with that. And we've developed a pattern of listening to our flesh and saying, whatever you say, because I need to feel good. I need to feel loved. I need to feel respected. I need to have all my discomforts removed. And so it gets to the point where we can't even help ourselves, where we even want to head in a different direction, but the flesh says, no, we're going to do it this way. Okay. What if you could interrupt that process? Your flesh is speaking to you saying, you need this. You must have this. You must react this way. What if you could interrupt that way and say, no, I don't. I don't have to do what you have to. I don't have to do what you say, flesh. I'm going to do what I choose to do, what my spirit longs to do. The Spirit of God that's come into me, if you've invited the Spirit of God into your life, then you've got the Spirit of God that says, don't do it the flesh way, do it my Holy Spirit way. And so what if the Spirit within you, along with your spirit, could say to the flesh, no way. So you're going to go about this week saying, flesh, I'm not going to listen to you. And the flesh goes, that's so cute. Flesh, I don't need that cup of coffee. Yeah, right. Yeah, let's put that one to the test. I don't need to eat that much. I don't need to respond in this angry way. The flesh just, it sort of laughs us off, right? It says, no. You need to survive. You need what I say you need in order to survive and to be comfortable and to have life. And so you must do what I say or you will not have life. And your life is at risk. I'm in control. And we say, no, I'm going to fight you. But then eventually we just give in. I say, why did I give in again? But what if we could choose to value something more than what the flesh says to value? The flesh says, I value comfort and I value survival. But what if you could say, yeah, but I'm going to choose to value something more than comfort and I'm going to choose to value something more than survival? What if I chose to value faithfulness over survival? And the flesh is saying, yeah, good luck with that. Because history proves that the power of the flesh is stronger than your willpower. And think about it this way. Every time you embrace a sin, every time you do something sinful, It's because you are valuing comfort and survival over faithfulness. Because the Holy Spirit says, no, be faithful and do what is right, even when it's hard. And the flesh is saying, no, not when it's hard. Do what's faithful and what's right when it's easy. But when it's hard and inconvenient, don't worry about faithfulness. Go with what's comfortable and what feels good. And that's our challenge. So how do we break this pattern in our lives? And this is where the biblical concept of fasting may come in. And I don't know if any of you have tried fasting here. I know some of you have. But fasting is one of those things we look and say, yeah, right. Like, nobody likes fasting. No one thinks, oh, hey, yay, I get to fast and go without that which makes me feel good for this next season. It's not a fun pastime. It is uncomfortable. It creates headaches. It gives you hunger pangs. It makes you walk around with this hangry attitude. And do people really want to be around you when you're fasting from something? Like if you're fasting from caffeine, do people want to be around you? Right? Do you want to be around you? Right? So this is the challenge with fasting is, why would we choose to fast when it is so unpleasant and it is so uncomfortable? Who even came up with this idea? God. So what is it, first of all? Well, fasting is, first of all, associated with mourning. Not early mourning, but a sense of sorrow mourning. A mourning for that in your that in your life which is not the way you want it to be. It's a mourning for your current reality. And it's a longing for blessing. So for some, we fast for different reasons, but fasting is really saying, I'm going to counter what I'm hungry for. I'm going to restrict that which I'm hungry for. Because John Piper, a pastor, he said this: what we hunger for most, we worship. And what you're thinking through, what is it that is the highest priority in your life? What is it that you work everything else around? And be careful as you think about this. What are you going to work everything else around? That is the priority in your life. If you work something around this, then you're saying, then these other things aren't as important. This is most important. So what things do you work around what? What things do you work around God? Yes, God, when life is normal and life is then you come first. But when these things happen, no, these other things come first, and I will work you around these other things versus, and so what Piper is saying is what you hunger for the most, what drives you the most, what sets the agenda the most, that's actually what you value the most. And what you value the most is what you worship. So right now, what are you worshiping the most? What do you value the most? And our heads are going to say, well, I value God the most. But does my life actually reflect that? Does God get the centerpiece of my life and everything rotates around him and worshiping of him and the family of God? Or do I find that gets bumped when this shows up? And so John Piper is just saying, I want you to consider what you are hungry for most. What do you work around what? That's your priority. And by the way, then that's actually your God. That's your idol. And we don't think about things as being our idols in our culture. But really, when you work everything around that is your idol. That is the centerpiece of your life. And reflect on that. Sometimes what we discover is that, that centerpiece actually isn't God, it isn't worship, it isn't the family of God, it's other stuff. And so then we say, well, I want to change that. But we find that changing that and letting go of those other things that make us feel good and make us feel significant and make us feel respected and make us feel like we belong, it's hard to diminish those things to pursue this, because those things have taken such a place of importance in our life. But the problem is those things keep us from experiencing the purpose-filled life God has for us in his family. Do you understand that God has wired you to impact his family? God did not invite you into a one-on-one relationship. That is nowhere in the Bible. God always invites you into relationships so that you can be part of his family, a citizen of his kingdom, a brick in his temple, a member of his body. He's inviting you into community. And why does God invite you into community? Because he is community. God in his nature is community. He's Father, he's Son, and the Holy Spirit existing as one in community. And so then when he created us, he just didn't create us as Adam. He created Adam and Eve to be in community. And then as we came together, we would multiply and create larger community. God is all about community. Nowhere in Scripture does he invite you just into an independent one-on-one relationship with him. He invites you into something much bigger. And so then when he gifts you, when he says, I have given you spiritual gifts in 1 Corinthians 12, it's not for you. He's given you ability for the family, the common good of the family of God. And so what we're saying here is, if you're a child of God with the Spirit of God in you, then you are essential. You have an essential role to play in the family of God. And that's what this network course that we're going to be doing is going to help you figure out. What is your role? But sometimes what we discover is other things take priority in our lives. Other things set the agenda. And how do we start breaking the patterns that we've established in our lives? And so fasting is one of the ways the Bible says to break your current pattern of operation, break the holds that are on you, forcing you to act and respond in these ways. There's a way to break that. And so fasting can be for several different purposes. I got a few of them listed here. One is just mourning sin in my life. I hate the sin in my life, and God, I want to break the bondage to that sin in my life. Others could be mourning a loss. Like when David lost his child with Bathsheba, he just mourned that time. It can be about mourning crises in your life. I've gone through this horrendous time and I'm just grieving. And sometimes part of the grieving is I'm just not going to eat for a couple. I just want to fast from food just because I want to just fully grieve. It's interesting. They even fasted in the Bible for safe travels. This was when Ezra was leaving Babylon and he's going to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple, and he was too embarrassed to ask the king for a security company because he said, God is with us. And they go, okay, God being with us, that means we're not asking for the security complement from the king of Babylon to protect us on the journey because God is with us. So they fasted and prayed saying, God, would you give us safe journeys to Jerusalem? It can be for times of testing. We're going to talk a little bit about Jesus testing in the wilderness. It can be for seeking direction. God, we just want to fast because we want to hear from your voice and you're leading in your direction. What direction you want us ahead with this decision that's coming ahead of us? What do we do? And sometimes fasting just clears the agenda, clears the thoughts, and just says, God, we're seeking you to speak into our lives on this issue. And then for our purposes today, we're going to talk about self-control, fasting for self-control. So one thing that I always encourage people when it comes to fasting is know what your purpose is in fasting. If we're going to say that our purpose is to gain greater self-control, then what we're saying is, God, I'm coming to you to fast in this next season, however long that fasting time is, because there is this control in my life that I don't want to be there. My flesh is telling me I must do this, but I don't want to do that, but I keep doing it. And so I want to interrupt that pattern, and I want to learn how to surrender control. And so this is where fasting can come into play. Jesus, as soon as he started his ministry, he was sent out into the wilderness to fast. In Matthew chapter 4, it says this. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. Go figure. Then the tempter approached him, Satan, and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." And he answered, "It's written, man must not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Seems like a strange response. Satan comes up to Jesus, 40 days without eating. After 40 days without eating, you are on the verge of starvation. You cannot really survive much beyond that. You can just imagine the hunger that Jesus, every fiber of his physical body would be screaming at him to eat. Because when your body is deprived of what it needs for life, it demands that you do something about it. It shuts down every other aspect of your thoughts and your body to say, we need to focus on this one thing to survive. We must eat. So when Satan comes up to Jesus after 40 days, said, "Jesus, just turn the rock into bread, would you?" Would it have actually been wrong for Jesus to turn a rock into bread? He turned water into wine, and that was just for a party. That wasn't about survival. Turning a rock into bread would not have been wrong in and of itself. So the question then is, what's the temptation? What is the test for Jesus here? Well, Jesus reveals what the issue is by the quote, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." And why? Why does he say that? Well, he's going back into Deuteronomy. And in Deuteronomy chapter 8, this is what it says. This is the Israelites have wandered through the wilderness for 40 years, and now they're camped at the Jordan. Before they cross over to the Jordan, Moses does a review of the law of God. That's why this book is called Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy means second law. It's a second telling of the law that was given at Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments and all that. He says, "Remember that the Lord your God led you on the entire journey these 40 years in the wilderness so that he might humble you and test you to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you by letting you go hungry. Then he gave you manna to eat, which you and your ancestors had not known, so that you might learn that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord." So what God is saying here is, when he's talking to the Israelites, he says, there were times in the wilderness journey where I let you go without food or without water to test you. Now, he's the God of provision. He always provides. And he says, I'm going to take you from Egypt. I'm going to take you to the promised land. Just trust me. But they'd get to these points where God would let them go 3 days without food or water. And they would start to grumble, saying, "What? You just brought us out into the wilderness to die?" And so they're now distrusting God's promise to get them to the promised land. And they're saying, "God, like, you are not feeding us. We're going to die here." And so they would start to rebel against Moses. And they even threatened, a few times they wanted to stone Moses. But they were threatened to turn back to bondage in Egypt, where life was so wonderful because they had melons and meat and good food. What's controlling the agenda? Stomach. Feed me. It gets so bad that after 3 days, only 3 days, they're already saying, "Yeah, let's go back to that miserable bondage of slavery in Egypt just because we had food there." So any of you who struggle with food, you understand the Israelites' dilemma. 3 days in, and they're already struggling. And so what Jesus says when he quotes this passage, he understands that sometimes going without food is a test. Going without what your body demands is a test to see, how are you going to respond? Are you going to choose faithfulness, or are you going to choose survival? What you think is survival. The Israelites, they're saying, "No, survival. Yes, we'll be faithful as long as God gives us what we think we need. As long as I feel good, as long as it's comfortable, I'll be faithful then. No problem being faithful then. When God was defeating their enemies, no problem being faithful. When God was blessing them with abundance, no problem being faithful. But what happens when God removes the blessing and he just says, here you are with the bare basics. Will you still be faithful? Will you still trust me? Is it going to be about you or is it going to be about me? See, over here, it's really all about me. I will follow God as long as God does things for me. Well, who's really at the center of that equation? It's me. It's pure selfishness. But guys, I hate to admit, I camp out in the me world a lot more than I'm comfortable admitting. Much of my life, every time I grumble and complain, who's the center of that? Me. I'm not getting what I think I should have to have full, abundant, joyful, happy life. But what if I saying it's not about me? What is about faithfulness to God? The man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that just comes from the mouth of God. That's what gives me life. He is the life giver. He is the one who sustains. He's the one who blesses. He's the one that provides. I only exist because of him. So I'm willing to step into discomfort with the God of creation than step into comfort and be separated from him. And this is the challenge that Jesus was confronted with. See, it was not a sin for Jesus to turn a stone into bread. The problem with the temptation is that the time of testing was not yet finished. God called him into the wilderness to fast, to be tested, and the temptation had not yet been finished. The time of testing was not finished. So Jesus is saying, yeah, I would love to eat that. I would love to turn a stone into bread, but there's something more important than my survival. It's just being faithful to what God calls me to. And God called me to this fast, and this fast is not yet finished. Are we willing to give up discomfort? Or are we willing to give up comfort and embrace discomfort for God's purposes? Or is comfort always going to trump discomfort? There's a lot of things I think I would probably do for God if it wasn't for the fact that it was uncomfortable and risky. God tested the Israelites in the wilderness numerous times, and they failed almost every single time. Jesus understood temptation, and so he resolved not to fall into the same patterns. And I want you to think about it. If Jesus couldn't say no to the flesh in that moment, would he ever survive the cross? Remember when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's just sweating blood of anticipation for the incredible discomfort that's about to come, that he knows is going to result in death. If Jesus couldn't handle hunger pains, how could he ever survive that experience? The fact that Jesus paved the way through denying himself in the wilderness, it brought him to the point of the cross saying, hey, I'm able to say no to comfort and embrace discomfort there. I can do it here too. And so really what we want to do is we want to start learning how to be faithful in the small areas so we can be faithful when God calls us to greater things or greater challenges. Fasting is the ultimate discipline in the body. I want you to think about it. When you deny yourself of food or food and water, you are denying your body the most basic essential it needs for survival. There is nothing more important when it comes down to food and water. If that's why your body, when you start to abstain from eating or from drinking water, your body starts to yell at you and scream at you, and it'll cut down every other mental function, honing in on how do I get food? How do I get water? I need to survive. And so this is the interesting thing. If you can gain control over your body in those moments where it is screaming at you for basic survival, then you can gain control over your flesh in other areas of temptation. Because those other areas, the body doesn't even think is as serious as the food and drink issue. So if you can gain control in this area, then you'll be able to exercise control in these broader areas. And so really, it's got to come down to this issue of the heart that says, I so long for the righteous life that God has for me that I'm willing to forsake this other stuff. In fact, I hate this other approach to life that I've embraced all these years that just doesn't give me joy, doesn't give me peace, doesn't give me purpose, doesn't give me contentment. I just don't like what this world has given to me. And it's got to start with this sense of discontentment. Listen to what the prophet Joel says. He says, even now, this is the Lord's declaration. Turn to me with all your heart, with fasting, weeping, and mourning. Tear your hearts, not just your clothes, and return to the Lord your God. When people were so grieved over something in their life, that they would demonstrate that by taking their clothes and just tearing their clothes and just falling to the ground in humility. And God's saying, spiritually speaking, I just don't want you to tear your clothes. I want you to tear your hearts. Mourn the sin in your life. Mourn that which distracts you from God, his family, and his purposes. Start to hate the very things that are a distraction to you. And rend your heart. It says, tear your hearts, not just your clothes, and return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate. He's slow to anger. He is abounding in faithful love, and he relents from sending disaster. Who knows? He may turn and relent and leave a blessing behind him, so you can offer a grain offering and a drink offering to the Lord your God. He's saying, when you've camped out over here, you are not experiencing the blessing and the provision of God. You are being forced to do it all in your own strength and striving and grasping, and it's stressful. It creates anxiety. It creates worry and fear. If you have any of those things in your life, you need to understand that's because you're trying to control something and you don't think you can. And it creates this fear and this anxiety and depression in your life. And God's saying, turn back to me, the author and provider of life. But you got to hate everything you've embraced over here that's given you that result. Hate it and mourn it and grieve it and look for something better. And that something better is turn with all your heart back to God. And just maybe God will start pouring his life into you, and God will start blessing you and giving you everything you need for life. And the fears and the anxieties are going to fade and drift away the more you turn to him for that. So fasting is really rooted in a commitment that I will hunger for God above anything else my flesh hungers for. I hunger for food, or I hunger for caffeine, or I hunger for gambling, I hunger for pornography, I hunger for wealth, I hunger for relationship. Whatever you're hungering for, God says, hunger for me first. Seek first my kingdom and my righteousness, and I'll take care of everything you need. I will take care of it all. And so Paul writes it this way. He says, therefore, in Romans 6, therefore do not let sin reign in your mortal body, so that you obey its desires, and do not offer any parts of your body to sin as weapons for unrighteousness. In other words, just don't do things that sin wants to do, but as those who are alive from the dead, offer yourselves and your bodies and all the parts of yourselves to God as weapons for righteousness. In other words, we're going to do the righteous things that God created us for. For sin will not rule over you, because you are not under law, but under grace. So what fasting does, fasting interrupts your natural reflexive patterns and approach to doing whatever your body tells you you must do. Fasting says, no, you don't. Flesh, you're going to tell me I have to do this, but I'm choosing not to. When you're fasting, your body's going to say, you have to eat. Eat now. And you're going, no. Oh, yeah? You're not going to listen to me? Well, fine. I'm going to send you a headache. No. Yeah, I got the headache. I'm experiencing it. It's really annoying, but no. Oh, yeah? I'm going to send you real serious hunger pangs. You're really going to, I'm going to make you hangry. You're saying, yeah, feeling it. But no, I am not eating. I'm not doing what you say because I am choosing to dedicate my life solely to God and his purposes. And right now, you're not in control. He's in control. I'm doing what he is calling me to for his purposes. I'm going to hunger after God more than I hunger after food, like you tell me to. I'm going to hunger after God and his righteousness, and I just want to have a deeper intimacy with him, and I'm going to spend this time focusing on him, not on the food that you're telling me to focus on. Well, easier said than done. So let's talk through how, if you wanted to do a fast, if you wanted to break that cycle in your life, if you want to break some sinful pattern or addiction in your life, here's how fasting, how to approach it. Number one, I say, choose your purpose. Remember, there's different purposes. So, for instance, for our context in the series on self-control, let's just assume that I want to gain greater self-control over my life. There are areas in my life where my body is calling the shots, and I'm not listening to God. I'm listening to my body. And so there's these areas where I want to break that pattern, and I want to be free to do things God's way, not the flesh's way. And so if we choose self-control as our purpose, then I would recommend a full food fast. People sometimes saying, I'm just going to fast from sugar. Or I'm just going to fast from desserts. Or I'm going to fast from this. I'm recommending a full food fast because the most basic control over your body is food. It's survival. So if you can get down and if you can interrupt the most basic demand your body has, then you can interrupt any other demand. And so I encourage you to go without food. So in other words, no sugar, no supplements, just water, or no water. Sometimes the fast is I'm going to go without food or water. You can only go without water for so many days. Food, you can typically do 40 days. Water, that's a little bit of a smaller window. So no juices. What happens when you are in a fast and you take juice? It spikes your insulin levels. And in fact, it makes the hunger worse. And it also reduces then the need for self-control. The whole point of this is, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but I am battling the uncomfortableness. That is the whole point of it, is when I'm uncomfortable, am I going to do the righteous thing? Or when I'm uncomfortable, am I always going to give in to comfort? So you actually want to make it as uncomfortable as you can in some ways. So that's why, like, if I get headaches, I don't take Tylenol. Man, this fast would be a lot easier without Tylenol. But this is the point. I don't want it to be easy. I want to conquer my need for easy. This is the problem. I keep being driven to do what's easy and what's comfortable. In a fast like this, I'm trying to say, hey, bring on the discomfort. Because you know what? Discomfort is not going to control me. So bring me your worst. Bring the discomfort on. And I'll actually think that way. I got a headache? Great. This is what I'm battling. I'm glad you're there, headache, because just because I headache, I'm not going to give in to the body. I get these hunger pains. I feel like eating. Oh, man, I really want to eat. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm feeling that, because this is the point. You don't tell me what to do. I'm going to push through the discomfort and get to the other side. Now, here's the challenge, though, is if you have to be working during a fast, you may need to take something. And maybe you'll take water with something added to it, like maybe water with celery or cucumber, spinach, kale, zucchini, or lemon, or a pinch of salt, but very little. You don't want to do things like smoothies. You don't want to do orange juice, apple juice, grape juice, pineapple, tomato. I would even question the lemon. You don't want anything too acidic. That's just, yeah. The issue here is know what you want to accomplish. Do you remember the parable in Matthew 23 of the different soils and the plants that sprout up? One of the plants, it sprouted up, but then all these thorns grew up around it. And really what fasting is fasting is the process to trim around the plant and to trim away all the stuff that we think need to be there, but they shouldn't be there. The things, and it might even be good things. It's I have an apple tree, and it's sprouted a bunch of branches. I'm excited, but actually, I don't want all those good branches. I want to actually prune those branches so that there's more investment into the fruit itself. I don't want to invest in all the branches and the leaves. I want to invest in fruit. And so sometimes we just allow all these branches to grow up in our lives, and they look good, and they're leafy green. It looks like a great tree, but that's not what I ultimately want. And so partly we need to learn how to prune away the stuff, even the good stuff, so that we can bear more spiritual fruit in our relationship with God and as part of his family, building up the family of God. So this is where we want to starve the weeds, and essentially, in our life. The stuff that's choking out the spiritual vitality out of us. We used this passage last week, Hebrews 12:1. Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, and then we talked about those who were the great heroes of faith of Scripture, let us lay aside every hindrance and sin that so easily ensnares us. And let us run with endurance the race that lies before us. So in a fast, you want to know what your purpose is. What am I fasting for? I'm fasting for greater control in my life, and in order to do that, I need to exercise control over my body. So I'm going to use the denial of food as my means to gain control over the most basic essentials of life, so that I can gain control over the lesser demands of the body. Secondly, set a time frame. 1 day does not typically cut it for me. I can easily go a day without eating and not even realize it. All right, I just get focused on what I'm doing, and it's 5 o'clock. I should probably eat something. Right? Food for me is often more of an inconvenience. So if I'm going to fast, I know I need to up it a little bit in the time duration, especially if I'm fasting because I want to gain control. I need to do a minimum 3 days because I just know 1 day is not going to be enough. 2 days, it's just starting. So for those of you, though, if you've never fasted, you may just want to start with a 24-hour fast. Hey, I'm just going to go 24 hours. And see how that goes. And then, okay, maybe I'll expand it to 2 days, maybe to 3 days. Set a time frame, but also you need to choose a time frame in light of, I knew that, I was going to be having our neighbors over for supper. I knew that the next day we were going down to Yarmouth to do some drywalling, stuff like that. So I thought, okay, I can't really do a 7-day fast here because I'm going to need physical energy for some of the stuff that is coming up. So, that's just being smart, because when you're fasting, if depending on how long you do it, you're going to get a little bit lightheaded. You might get a little bit weak. So I didn't want to be fainting in the middle of doing drywalling stuff, standing up on a ladder. Woo! So consider the time frame, and I want you to think through, though, people who talk about fasting, often they say the most spiritual impacting fasts are somewhere between day 7 and day 30 of fasting. If you want to have real spiritual victory, victory over your flesh and your body, and you really want God and develop this deeper intimacy with God, they recommend 7 to 30 days of fasting, going without food. Because really, and we'll talk more about this, but as you go into the fast, your brain cuts away all the clutter and it focuses on what's most important. And if you're saying what's most important is my relationship with God, then that actually drives you into a deeper intimacy with God than you've ever experienced. And this is what people are sharing, is the times of spiritual victory in my life have happened when I've gone into real deep intimacy with God, and the other demands of life I've pushed to the side. So set the time frame, consider how long you want to go. But maybe if you've never done a fast before, don't go for the 40-day fast. Maybe go for like a 1, 2, or 3-day fast, see how it goes. Number 3, I want you to understand the dynamics of fasting. There are stages of fasting. The 0 to 6 hours, your body is just digesting food that you ate earlier. 6 to 12 hours, your blood sugar begins to drop and you start getting mildly hungry, maybe a little bit hangry, and you start thinking about food. Man, I'd really like to eat right now. I haven't eaten recently. From 12 to 24 hours, your body starts burning fat and headaches start developing from sugar and caffeine withdrawal, low energy, bad health. Days 2 to 3 or 24 to 48 hours. Day 2 is always the hardest. Day 2 is when your body is detoxing. So if you've had a lot of sugar or caffeine before that, it's just detoxing and your brain is just yelling at you. And so you get these headaches and you are starting to feel lightheaded when standing. You get this dry mouth, but mental clarity is starting to begin. Days 2 to 3, stronger fat burning. In 3 days, I lost 7 pounds. I've gained it back right like that. So it's not a good recommended dieting process. But you're going to do stronger fat burning. It's going to start cleaning up your cells. You will actually experience reduced hunger. Day 2 into day 3, you are actually less hungry. You still feel a little bit weird and a little bit off, but headaches are diminishing. But actually, you start to feel less hungry. You start getting a little bit of more calmness and mental clarity. You will be a little weaker. You may feel cold. Days 3 plus, you're going to have fatigue, potential low blood pressure, dizziness, but increased mental clarity, and a stronger awareness of God's presence. Interesting, isn't it? When you stripped away all the other clutter, it makes you more open to hearing from God. And keep in mind, during the fast, the idea is not just to stop eating. The idea is to saying, I want to use that time and that focus now on God and a deeper relationship with God. I want to know God better. And so instead of eating, I'm just going to spend that time talking to God. And during that time, that's where I get to confess, saying, God, my flesh still really longs for this. And God, I just hate that. I just confess that to you. And I want more of you. And I want the peace and the fulfillment that you give. Listen to what it says in Jeremiah 2, verse 13. For my people have committed a double evil. They have abandoned me, the fountain of living water, and have dug cisterns for themselves, cracked cisterns that cannot hold water. John says this, or Jesus says this in John 4. Everyone who drinks from this water will get thirsty again, but whoever drinks from the water that I will give him will never get thirsty again. In fact, the water I will give him will become a well of water springing up to eternal life. Don't you wish you had this well of water just welling up into you, giving you full abundant life in the Lord? And if you're missing that, then Jesus is saying you're going to the wrong water source. You're turning to the wrong thing to give you what you need. And so really fasting is saying, God, I want to turn away from this. I grieve this. I confess this. And I would just want more of you. I hunger for you, God. I choose to hunger for you, God, more than I hunger for even life itself. So here's some tips I want to give you on fasting. Number 1. Consider when. Already talked about that. Understand that you will have times of headache, dizziness, and fatigue, so don't fast during a heavy work time. If you have to be doing a lot of physical stuff, not a great time to fast. 1 or 2 days before, eat light meals. In other words, decrease your sugar input into your body and the sugar expectations of your body. And I'd say that of caffeine too. Cut back on sugar and caffeine. Number 3, or C, drink water. Stay hydrated. So typically my fast I have been drinking water, and I just constantly have a water bottle or a glass of water. Sometimes I actually like to boil water and just drink hot boiled water because I can pretend it's tea. Strangely enough. D, be aware of bad breath. Be aware of it, but don't chew chewing gum. Because again, that's the sugar release. I was supposed to go for a blood test one time, and I fasted the whole night before like I was supposed to for the blood test. And on the drive there, I just, I probably had bad breath. I threw in a little sugar chewing gum. I get to the hospital, and they say, okay, you fast? Yep, you have had nothing to eat. You said nothing to eat? You didn't have gum or anything? Oh, I did have a piece of gum. Oh, well, then we can't do that test. That little bit of sugar throws everything off. That's true in fasting too. So do that. But be aware of bad breath. Brush your teeth often. Use the discomfort. This is E. Use the discomfort to remember the purpose and to prompt prayer and dependence on God. This is probably the biggest tip I can give you. When you are in a fast and it is uncomfortable, use that, saying, that's why I'm doing this. Because I am so used to just giving into the demand to be comfortable. So whenever I experience discomfort and I'm uncomfortable, then yes, that is why I'm doing this. I embrace the discomfort. It is not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to pray to God in the midst of my discomfort, and that's good enough. And that's what I do in those times. F, drink water, stay hydrated. G, plan your time. What are you going to do instead of eating? What are you going to do instead? You normally have this time block each day where you normally sit down and you eat food, and your body's used to that rhythm. It's used to that pattern. What are you going to do instead? Remember, it's not about simply depriving yourself of something, but of growing in your relationship with God. So here's what I want you to do is encourage you just to, and so I would use those times just for a prayer time. I'd sit down and read my Bible. I'd say, hey, God, the reason I'm doing this fast and why I'm not eating right now is because I want more of you. I want a deeper intimacy with you. I want to hear more from you. And so number H, be aware of the mental games that you'll start to experience, especially like day 2 and day 3. Mental games. Your brain's going to say, you know what? I think you fasted enough. Or especially like if I've got a 3-day fast and I'm like 4 or 5 hours out, my brain very powerfully is going to say, hey, Rob, you've done it. You've essentially done it. Good enough. Just break the fast now. And that's essentially what Satan was wanting Jesus to do. Jesus, it's at the end of the 40 days, Satan's saying, hey, break the fast. But there's still like maybe 10 more minutes left to go. And Jesus says, no, until the Father tells me it's done, I'm not done. So I even had that I was really tempted to say, you know what, I'm going to be breaking my fast at this point in time, but it's only 2 hours left. Oh, the temptation in those last 2 hours. The worst. Be aware of it and prepare for it. Be aware of your attitude. This is a time for humility. Just because you're hangry doesn't mean you have to have a bad attitude. Like just because you're hungry doesn't mean you have to be hangry. Just because you're hungry and you're feeling comfortable doesn't mean you have to treat other people in an ungodly way. There doesn't have to be a correlation between those two. You can still be incredibly miserable and godly at the same time. You just have to commit saying, I feel absolutely terrible. I feel absolutely horrendous. But I'm not going to let my sinful nature dictate how I relate to the people around me. I'm still going to choose to treat people with love and respect, even though I feel like this. J, drink water, stay hydrated. K, pray. And when I say pray, I mean, yes, talk to God about what you're dealing with, but more so, listen. Give space saying, God, is there anything you want to say to me? And don't be surprised that if in those times of fasting and in those times of quietness and prayer, that God may actually want to say something to you. And go with it. And then break the fast gently with a light, non-spicy meal. I've known some people that, I get to break the fast and they dive into this big carb meal. That doesn't go well. Just something. In fact, I did a sort of a pre-break in the sense I'm going to have some crackers and some cheese, and then I had a banana, And you know what? I think the acid in banana just, that didn't feel good. So even just break the fast smart, like maybe a sandwich, maybe some soup, maybe some crackers, but break the fast gently. Just don't dive into a big meal. Guys, listen to this, what Paul says. We've used this passage before. Don't you know that the runners in a stadium all race, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way to win the prize. And in fasting, it's the prize of breaking that pattern, that addiction in your life, and a deeper intimacy with God. Now, everyone who competes exercises self-control in everything. They do it to receive a perishable crown, but we an imperishable crown. So I do not run like one who runs aimlessly or box like one just beating the air. Instead, I discipline my body, my flesh, and bring it under strict control so that after preaching to others, I myself will not be disqualified. Jesus said this in Luke 9, if anyone wants to follow after me, let him deny himself. Take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me will save it. For what does it benefit anyone if he gains the whole world, yet loses or forfeits his soul? I really want to encourage you saying, is there a pattern in your life right now that you hate? And you have not been able to break that pattern. And you've tried willpower and you've tried medical assistance, you've tried different things, but you are stuck in that. Then I would encourage you, want you to try a solution that God recommends. And God recommends fasting as one potential spiritual discipline that is specifically designed to break the hold of the flesh over your body so that you can surrender control to the purposes of God in your life. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you maybe even this week, maybe just take a 24-hour fast, but then plan and strategize a longer one. But remember, keep it in purpose. Keep it in mind. Jesus went to the cross. He was willing to experience complete discomfort and to die so that you could experience full, abundant life. We're going to celebrate what Jesus did here. We're going to eat the bread and drink the juice. The bread represents his body that's broken for you. The juice represents the wine that's his blood that's poured out for you. He says, my body is broken for you. Eat this in remembrance of me. My blood is shed for you. It's the blood of a new covenant relationship with God. I'm giving my life for you. I'm willing to give up everything for you. I'm willing to fast from life. You know, that's essentially what he's saying. I'm willing to fast from life so that you can have life. If you've come to the point where you're saying, God, I want that. If you come to the point saying, God, come into my life and take control of my life. I give my life to you for your purposes, not my purposes, but for your purposes and for your family. Then God, come into my life and set me apart for you. If you've come to that point, then this is your celebration. If you've not yet said, God, you have complete control over my life, then this is not yet your celebration. You are still outside his spiritual family, and he's inviting you in. If today you're saying, God, I want to be part of your family, would you forgive me for all my sin? Would you forgive me for being in control, doing things my way and not your way? God, come by your Spirit into my life and forgive me because of Jesus' death on the cross. Come into my life. If you say, God, forgive me and be Lord of my life, then his Spirit will come into you right now, today, and this becomes your celebration. And we invite you to partake. If you're not there yet, that's okay. But we encourage you to consider that. So over these next few songs, I'm going to encourage you, we're going to actually sing 3 songs. So maybe at the end of the second song and the third song, come up and grab a piece of bread and juice and just take it back to your seats and just hold on to it until we all have it together. And then we'll do it as one body in Christ. And so grab the bread, grab the juice, come back to your seats and just stand or sit and just hold it and just saying, Jesus, you did this for me. You sacrificed everything for me. Thank you for the life that you want to give me now. So we're going to sing.